start off by saying, you know, who am I? Why did I persist for 35 years of this? It's kind of a time from being an Ohio farm boy, going off to Ohio State. I was going to be a veterinarian. I was in pre-vet for 3 years, and part of applying to vet school, we had to have 3 letters from local veterinarians saying that you should be a veterinarian. All 3 of my local vets doing large animal practice said, don't do it. So yeah, with that kind of background, I switched to pre-med and got my BS at Ohio State. Then I went on to Ohio State to the med school and spent 4 years finishing in 1966, if you guys can think of that, 1966. Nobody remembers 1966. So I then went to LA County, University of Southern California service for my internship, which was a good practice for Vietnam. I don't know whether you know county hospitals, but you see about everything there. And Uncle Sam thought at that point that I really ought to be with him. That was Vietnam War days. And they drafted 900 physicians, veterinarians, and dentists every month from April through October of 1967. So you think of those numbers, 900 per month. And that's when LBJ said, crank her up. If you can look that up, because most people wouldn't be able to do it. So I went they sent me these papers to fill out, and it said, where would you like to go? And I put down Japan, Germany, I'd like to go to Alaska, and of course, I'm a draftee, right? So the likelihood of that is very slim. But they also had a place on there saying, is there anything about the service you'd like to know? If there is, write it down. Well, my brother had been in the Army, and he'd come home talking about these guys wearing the green beret, all the best equipment jumping out of airplanes. And I wrote down, is there a place for physicians in the Special Forces? If there is, send me information. They sent to me. So my orders came in, and it was to Fort Sam Houston to learn how to put your tie on right, and from there down to Fort Benning, Georgia, to learn how to jump out of airplanes. Made me nervous for a while, but I really came to love that. From there, I went to the 7th Special Forces at Fort Bragg, and from there I went to the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Course for officers in the Green Berets, per se. From there, I went off to Panama, and we were going to do a jungle warfare course with the B Company of the 7th. While we were there, the Pueblo was captured. Some remember that, some don't even know what the Pueblo was, but the North Koreans captured that. They called us back emergency return, and Fort Bragg was practically empty when we returned. They were all on the coast, so people didn't realize how hot that really was at that time. Similar things still going on with North Korea, as you all know. So history, they're cranking on the same kind of North Korea. From there, I went to Walter Reed for a 4-month course in tropical medicine, and then went over to Vietnam for 13 months with the 5th Special Forces. A very interesting time. People think I'm nuts, but for the kind of diseases we saw over there, it was phenomenal. I would have actually extended, but I had a family back home, so I returned after the 13 months. From there, I went back to the University of Kentucky, did my internal medicine, my pulmonary diseases, was chief resident there in medicine, and then I went to a research fellowship and cardiology training at the University of Colorado. I spent another 39 months there in training. For practice search, I looked at Fort Collins, Grand Junction, Cheyenne, Pocatello, Twin Falls, Idaho, Boise, Idaho, Moscow, Idaho, Spokane, Washington, Helena, Montana, Bozeman, Montana, Idaho Falls, and not even on the list was Casper. There's a friend of mine still in this town, and he had been on the faculty in Kentucky when I was training with Jim Maddox, a phenomenal man and a good friend. And I stopped through here on the way back from the big loop of looking at many of these places, and I called Jim up, and he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm looking for a place to practice cardiology and pulmonary medicine. He said, we don't have anybody that does either one of those here. I said, well, thanks, Jim. I'll see you. That was 31 December of 1974. And I went on down, I looked some more places, all the way down to the northern part, the southern part of Colorado, all these other places I've mentioned. And I thought, well, maybe I should look up there. Did a lot of praying about it, to be honest with you. And I had thought that, well, maybe this is the place. It is the opportunity to do all these things and do it myself. And after all these things I've told you, it creates a bit of an independent spirit in a person, and go out, pick it up, and do it yourself. So I kept looking back here, and I was not encouraged for it. Today, if Vicki Diamond wants a doctor, she pays his way in, pays for his food, pays for his room. At that time, I paid for my way up here, I paid for my food, I paid for my... And I went into practice here. I agreed to come here. They had no encouragement about cath labs or anything else. They just said, well, if you want to come on. I had to take out a draw loan to start my practice in 6 months before I took an extra out of practice. They were on a draw loan, so it ain't that way anymore. So that's how it started out here. I did come, as you all know, I began practice here in August of 1976. I was cardiopulmonary medical director. Carol Brighton was my administrative director, and Jeannie was a nurse in ICU, a very pretty nurse. And it was, you know, the present administrative offices were the ICU, and it was primitive. If you wanted any kind of hemodynamic monitors, we had no transducers. We had water manometers and central lines to measure the filling pressure. To get our first ability to measure from PA catheters, Swan Ganses, and to do arterial monitoring, we had to talk the administration out of getting another defibrillator. We had one in the hospital. And they had to carry it up to whatever floor when an arrest occurred. But I talked them out of it, and they let us get a 2-channel electronics for medicine unit, and we would roll it from bed to bed and hook up the transducers and measure the pressures. And that's how we first did the hemodynamic monitors. We moved forward. The area that's now the physician wing, or the lounge area and so forth, was our cardiopulmonary wing. That developed up through the major parts of 1978. In October of 1978, the heart cath lab opened. Dr. Coyer had joined me in 1978. I was here 2 years alone practice at the start of all that. And he joined me then, was here a year. Dr. Smith, Don Smith, and Dr. Kreisman joined in 1979. Dr. Matter came in 1980. I first started the first outreach clinics. I've started all the clinics we have, even started Sheridan. We lost it. Dr. Scaff tried to redo that. We never had one successful in Sheridan. But I tried that, and it didn't work up in Sheridan, didn't work in Rock Springs. The first clinics were actually in Sundance #1, Newcastle #2, Wheatland, and Torrington. They were really our real feed-in initially, and again, that was 1980. We started all 4 of those. We then had, get myself caught up here, cardiac surgery started with Dr. Ristroff in 1983. Bypass pump was done initially in the cath lab on pigs to train the crew. You probably didn't know that. Yeah. So the crew does. They will remember that we haul pigs down with the carts that we have for people when they die. We haul them down to the cath lab with these pigs, and then Dr. Ristroff would do bypasses and train the crew in there with those pigs. Dr. Ristroff quit in November of 1984 due to his mortality statistics, and Dr. Steplock came in 1985. We did start our angioplasty in 1983. During that time, Dr. Maysberg had joined us. Dr. Maysberg left our group in 1987, and the hospital recruited Dr. Romero for assisting her, so there were 2 groups in town at that time. That left Dr. Mattern and I doing the outreach clinics. Out of every 4 weeks, we'd be out in the road 2 weeks. You need to think of this. So 1 week, there'd be 1 guy on the road. We'd start out Monday and come back Friday night. The other guy, we were on call every other weekend during those same times. The next 2 weeks later, the other guy go on the road, and the guy here was on call 24/7 the week that guy was gone. We were on every other weekend. And you can imagine the lifestyle, and after a bit more time of that, and the other two in town getting cream of the crop, because we were out working all this time, Dr. Mattern said, I think I'll go to Reno. Now, Dr. Weiss had preceded him to Reno. He had joined, I didn't say that, he had joined Dr. Steplock about 1986 is what I put down. I think that's correct. Dr. Weiss went to Reno in 1987. They had our best year ever in number of pumps during that year he was with Dr. Steplock. So Dr. Mattern went to Reno, and I was 24/7 on call for about 9 months. And some of you all remember that. My then youngest daughter, Jackie, looked up one day and said, this is going to kill my dad. So after about 6 or 8 months in Reno, Dr. Mattern came back a couple of times to cover my practice. So I would get a break about every 6 to 8 weeks for a week. He did more cases. He did more cases in the week he was back than he had 7 months in Reno. So the clinics had stopped during that time when I was 24/7. The volume plummeted without the pump. I called Mike Sullivan, who'd been on the board with me at this hospital. He was governor. I had him call him Al Mattern up and say, come back. After 9 months, he did return. Dr. Steplock, at a later point, moved to Olympia, Washington, and started a new program there with his friend Dr. Quinton. Dr. Weiss returned. He had moved on to California. He returned as our cardiovascular surgeon after Lou went to Olympia. Dr. Weiss died in about 1997. Is that right? Does anybody remember? I think it was 97. He had endocarditis, arrested at home. And we were covered by some surgeons from Southern California and Dr. Steplock in that interim, and then ultimately Lou came back here. The program has persisted with 10 outreach clinics. We have Rawlins, Lander, Riverton, Vermont, Warland, Buffalo, Gillette, Lusk, Douglas, and Wheaton. We retune the surgeon law. We go to Gillette 2 days of every week. We go to Riverton 1 day of every week. And we go every other week to most of the rest. We go over 6 weeks to Lusk. There are now 7 cardiologists, with 1 coming this summer. We have 1 pulmonologist we're recruiting. We no longer serve Sundance, Newcastle, and Torrington due to their proximity to other programs. Why did it come to Casper? It's a challenge. We have always been able to work through these problems. As you hear here, more work, make it happen. I don't know what the bed is going to do.